Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast and happy Friday. I'm really going to try to get through this without choking. Or coughing. I was literally choking before we started recording. So, anyway, Stephanie, we have to start with some typical blue state bullshit. And this is coming out of Minnesota. So there is a state employee named Dylan Bryan Adams, and he was found guilty of vandalizing multiple Teslas. There's police footage showing him literally like scratching and writing on Teslas. And basically, he's a left-wing nut job who was pissed off at Elon and Doge. And in total, I think he damaged like 6 different vehicles. So this guy is like a fiscal policy analyst for the Minnesota State Department of Health and Human Services. So someone in Tim Walz's administration. And listen to this complete fucking nonsense. On Wednesday, a Minnesota prosecutor declined to bring felony charges against this guy, and her reasoning was for public safety and recidivism rates. And instead, she just gave him like pre-charge diversion. This is Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, who I guess like people are already like they were already complaining about her beforehand. But I want to play this clip of her explaining why she made this decision.
Thank you for bringing that up. I think it's important that accurate information be out there. So we are and always have been focused on public safety. And if you look at the data on recidivism, in other words, when people come through the system, how often do they come back? If they go through the traditional system and they have a felony conviction on their record, they are much more likely to come back and commit a new crime. That is because a felony conviction destabilizes their lives. They may lose their job, lose their housing, and it can just lead to future criminal activity. What does work, and the recidivism rates are much, much lower, is diversion. And that's been proven over and over here and throughout the country. So diversion is accountability. The case was submitted to us by the police. We did not decline it. We looked at the case. What we really wanted was for the victims in that case to get restitution and for this person to be held accountable. We are accomplishing both of those by requiring him to go through a diversion program and to pay restitution to all 6 victims. What happened to those victims of those Teslas should not have happened. And just like any other property offense, which is one of the lowest level offenses that we have, we seek to hold people accountable in a way that will be consistent with public safety. And diversion is a proven way of doing that.
Okay, I could fucking go off on a 15-minute tangent here, and I'm going to try not to, but diversion is not fucking accountability. It might be for a 15-year-old kid who does some dumb shit for the first time. Like, I can see the argument that it's their first offense. Even if it's a felony, maybe give them diversion, right? But not for a fucking adult who is a state employee, who clearly knows the difference between right and wrong. And he literally chose to vandalize not one vehicle, but 6 fucking vehicles. Why? Because he was having a temper tantrum and he was mad at Elon Musk and the federal government. Like, am I just being like too black and white in cop mode about this, Stephanie?
No, I agree 100% with you. I want to know, is he going to keep his job? Because I'm sorry, if you're a state employee, you shouldn't have any criminal record whatsoever. You can't be trusted. I mean, like you said, this was not one vehicle, this was 6. And, you know, this is going to send the message to this whole movement of people that, yeah, you can go ahead and keep damaging Teslas and do whatever you want and nothing's going to happen to you. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I think I saw the video of this guy. It's like going around keying the shit out of those cars. I mean, it's not like he, you know, just, it was an accident. Like, he was absolutely vandalizing this. I think they said it was worth like $20,000 worth of damage. I don't know if that was per car or total, but either way, it's absolutely ridiculous. But this is the left now, right? It's like criminals are their heroes. And, it started, well, it probably didn't start with George Floyd, but that's when it really took off. You had a drug addict and a criminal on fentanyl that became their savior, right? And then they bailed out who knows how many criminals during the riots. And then, you fast forward to today, and who do you hear about left and right from any Democrat? This, Maryland father who's actually an MS-13 gang member who's here illegally from El Salvador, whose own wife said he was dangerous and abusive,
Right.
and signed, an affidavit saying that. They just act like, no, we need to save this guy, that he's just a Maryland dad, even though he has MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles, which you can only do, by the way, if you murder someone. He was caught with high-ranking MS-13 gang members, but oh, no, he's just a Maryland dad, and we must save him. Then you have, remember, I was telling you about that story in Texas of the 17-year-old boy, Austin Metcalf, who was stabbed in the heart simply because he asked this other boy to move out of his seat. So the other boy, I don't even want to say his name, but the left is treating him like he is the victim, even though he is the one that killed this other kid for no reason. And so remember I said how like People magazine was posting the link of how you could donate to this guy's legal defense. Well, people did donate. And instead of that money going to his legal defense, his mom bought a brand new house and a luxury vehicle. And the left is just like cheering this kid on, even though he is not the victim. He is the abuser. He's the criminal. He took someone's life. So it's just ridiculous. It's like the Democrat Party has just become the party of criminals. And unfortunately for them, most American citizens are good people and don't support crime. And so if this is the hill that they want to die on, so be it. Keep, letting people wreak havoc with no accountability. It's not going to win them any more votes.
I think this is definitely the hill they want to die on because they can't cry about the abortion issue anymore. So This is their focus now. They're making these like pathetic and sad appeals about quote unquote bringing home illegal fucking gang members and criminals and terrorists who were deported. And I'm sorry, but this isn't their fucking home. And these stunts are being pulled by these crazy left-wing politicians. And it's nothing but theatrics, like flying to these countries to go pick up the migrants. Like, go ahead. Why don't you fucking stay there? Stay far away.
Meanwhile, did that guy that flew there, that senator or whoever he was of Maryland, reach out to the mother of the woman who was brutally raped and killed by an illegal migrant? Nope.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything for her, but he's going to spend her tax dollars flying to El Salvador to help an MS-13 gang member.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's
Had
completely
to go on a
insane.
rant.
And I have to no, I hear you. I hear you. We could rant about this all day. But I want to play an interesting clip. I saw this morning. It's White House aide Stephen Miller, and he was talking to Newsmax about this whole problems going on with immigration and how the courts are trying to stop all of, Trump's executive orders. And he brought up the idea of how Americans deserve reparations for crimes committed by illegal migrants. So I want to play this clip of what he had to say.
Where are the damages for Americans?
Exactly.
I don't know how much time I have here, but I mean, for the love of God, where are the damages for Americans? Where do I even begin? Where do I even start? We used to have a functioning public school system in this country. Then we had open borders. Now our schools are in chaos and disarray. We need hundreds of translators. Nobody's learning how to read or write. An entire generation of Americans, multiple generations, in fact, have been robbed of educational opportunities. Entire cities. Look at Los Angeles. Once a paradise of safety, security, and prosperity. Entire neighborhoods occupied and controlled by foreign gangs. Where do all the residents who've been displaced, who've been forced out of Los Angeles, where do they go to get their reparations? And then what about the victims of fentanyl poisoning brought in by Democrats' open border? Hundreds of thousands of moms and dads whose kids are dead and buried in the ground. Where do they go to get their reparations from the government? And then all the women who have been raped, who've been beaten, who've been murdered, all the dads who've been shot dead and aren't home, all the police officers who've been slain by illegal aliens in ambush attacks in the line of duty. Where do any of these people go? Where do any of their families go to get reparations? Or the 500,000 children that Joe Biden trafficked across the southern border and put into the hands of unvetted so-called sponsors? Do you have any stories I could tell you of children that were trafficked across the border and raped because of the policies of Joe Biden? There aren't enough volumes that could fit into a library to calculate the carnage that has been inflicted by the Democrat Party's policy of open borders. We can spend the rest of our lives trying to document those harms. Where does our whole country go to get repaid for all of the wealth, all of the prosperity and security that has been stolen from us by decades of uncontrolled illegal mass migration? Because we all deserve reparations for what has been stolen from us. It is a tragedy that defies our ability to even describe it.
Damn.
He always gives a really good clip. He just goes off on reporters, and I freaking love it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think the Black community is very upset about his using the term reparations because they're saying this isn't the same. I think it is kind of similar.
Yeah, sure is. No, he's right, though, that look at how many opportunities are robbed from everyday Americans because they're, all of these illegal migrants, we've talked about it in the past, the exact amount, but they're draining the system, all the resources, whether it's schooling, healthcare. It's ridiculous. And I came across this clip. It's an older clip, because Tucker Carlson, I think it was June of last year, that he interviewed the president of El Salvador. And I just came across this on TikTok, but it made me think about that MS-13 gang member because he was saying how it's satanic. They do like satanic rituals, like actual sacrifices and stuff. And he said it started in LA. And I think I might have brought this up like way back when, but there were all these videos going around on TikTok about like people finding dead animals like on the beach in California. And they were saying, yeah, that's pretty common because they use them in these satanic rituals. Did you ever hear about that as a cop? Like did you ever come across dead animals?
No,
I saw it going around, and then when he was saying, like, yeah, MS-13, like, they're not just a gang. They, like, worship a beast or something. And so it just made me think about our whole conversation the other day of, like, good versus evil.
I'm going to have to ask some of my old coworkers.
Yeah, because whoever was posting this, like, they said they contacted, I don't know if it was the police or Coast Guard or whatever, because there were like bodies of animals and they were like, oh yeah, we see them all the time. Like it was no big deal. I'm like, what the hell? But it's like this good versus evil. And the Democrats continue to support like the evil side of things. I mean, it's like we're in a movie, the villains and the heroes, or at least that's the way I'm looking at it. So speaking of that, we talked about Klaus Schwab resigning from the World Economic Forum. And I mean, I don't know how much more evil you can get than the World Economic Forum. But you had mentioned, like, what if we get someone even worse than Klaus Schwab? So I couldn't help myself. I had to look up, like, what's going on so far. And they don't have someone permanent yet. But the interim chair, Peter Brabeck Letmoth, I don't know if I'm saying that right. He looks fucking terrifying. And Tara, I sent you the photo of him, which I Googled because I was like, maybe this is AI, but I Googled it and looked at like all the images of this guy. That is him. Is it just me, or does he look like some type of a robot or like cyborg?
Yeah, I read that he had some kind of eye disease or problem, and that's an older photograph. And if you look at more current photos of him, they fixed whatever was wrong with his eye. But of course, that's the photo that we're going to be seeing.
Yeah,
It's creepy.
and normally I would feel, I mean, I do feel bad if that's really the case. And I wouldn't say this if it was someone not involved in the World Economic Forum. But the whole reason I bring it up is because Klaus Schwab's like creepy little sidekick is known to be super interested in transhumanism. And same with just the World Economic Forum in general. Like, how many public speeches have they given about like using technology in these sort of weird ways, which bring up all kinds of ethical questions? So when I saw him, I was like, it's not that far-fetched to think that he has like merged with technology or something, because they do that kind of shit.
Maybe that's how they fixed his eye.
Probably. I don't know. But anyhow, I looked into him and he became infamous, I guess, in 2005 because he appeared in this documentary, Feed the World, where he claimed that drinking water is not a human right and that tap water should be controlled by corporations. And this guy was CEO of Nestle, okay? Nestle, like one of the biggest water distributors in the world. So that's a very disturbing stance that he took. And then while he was CEO of Nestle, he also collaborated with another evil elite, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, to acquire Pfizer's infant nutrition division. And we've discussed this in the past about the baby formula and baby food having all sorts of recalls and issues with like high levels of heavy metals. But with people like this in charge, it's no surprise that that's happening, and it's very terrifying. But he was also on the board for ExxonMobil, Roche, L'Oreal, and chair of the Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipatory Foundation, and longtime World Economic Forum trustee and vice president of the foundation board. So basically, he's a typical Davos elite. And he's just the interim chair, but I guess they have a committee that's been appointed that's going to appoint someone permanent. But after I saw this guy, I'm like, oh man, it probably will get worse. Worse than Klaus
this
Schwab.
guy's also, this guy's like 80 years old. And I don't know what it is with all of these elite organizations just being headed by the Crypt Keeper, right? And I don't trust anyone associated with the WEF, obviously. But I have to bring up some more news about Klaus Schwab, because this all came out in the last couple days, speculating as to why he more than likely stepped down. So an anonymous whistleblower came to light on Tuesday. And again, this was the day after he stepped down. And this whistleblower is making some pretty damning allegations of both financial and ethical misconduct by not only Schwab, but also his wife, Hildy, who used to work there as well. And the whistleblowers alleging that they made their subordinates withdraw like thousands of dollars from ATMs on Schwab's behalf. And they used World Economic Forum funds to pay for private in-room massages at hotels. And they allowed sexual harassment to like run rampant in the workplace. Another allegation is that Hildy, the wife, arranged for what they're calling quote unquote token meetings. So just like, we're going to have a meeting just so that she could fund luxury holidays. So basically the forum is paying for this useless meeting so that they can travel somewhere in luxury. And so all of this was obviously being paid for by the World Economic Forum, and the Wall Street Journal reported that a spokesperson for the Schwab family is denying the allegations about luxury travel and withdrawing money, but also said that he always pays back the forum for massage charges at hotels when he's traveling. And so the family is planning to file a lawsuit when they find out who this anonymous whistleblower is. But what's interesting is yesterday, the Board of Trustees at the World Economic Forum put out a statement saying that they are unanimously supporting an independent investigation into these allegations against Schwab and his wife. So I think something's going on there.
This whistleblower, I'm going to just send you lots of good vibes. I hope you stay safe and get a bodyguard, because I would not want to go up against these crazy elites. But speaking of the massages, I remember when they were doing their annual meeting, and this woman, I think she was from Sweden or something, but she was like the madame that would bring in all of these like prostitutes. And she's like, we're raising our rates because of inflation. And it was like something they all partake in. And it's just like known. So no surprise there that they're using funds for in-room massages. So creepy. I wish we could get our hands on this lawsuit though and go through it with a fine-tooth comb, because I have a feeling there's probably a lot of juicy information that would come out in discovery, but it's never going to make it to an actual like trial because they won't want discovery, to be made public. So they'll probably settle it out of court. Hopefully they settle and don't like hurt this whistleblower, because these people are evil. Again, it's good versus evil. And I don't know, I'm kind of nervous because I think we're going to see a lot of shaky things happening. They're not going to just like disappear without a fight. So,
Right, exactly. And that's why I keep saying, like, as many good things as Trump's trying to do, they're going to continue and try to destroy everything. So let's talk about some of the things Trump is doing, because let's start with a good one. Okay, I'm going to start with something positive. So this is according to Treasury Department data. U.S. Customs review or revenue is at an all-time high under Trump. We've talked about this a little bit before, but they have brought in, or the country has brought in, at least $15 billion in customs duties for the month of April. And that's a 60% increase over previous periods. Last week on April 22nd alone, we saw a record 11.7 billion in customs and excise taxes. And from what I read, this record-breaking number represents payments that have been settled and confirmed. So it's money that we have actually received. And again, this is just for the month of April. So I think this is really good news. But as usual, like, the left is not going to allow Trump to fix the country. And the lawsuits against the Trump admin are just like growing by the day. I can't even keep up. So on Wednesday, 12 states, this was reported by CNN, that 12 states are now suing the Trump admin for, quote, illegally imposing tax hikes on Americans through the tariffs. And this is a lawsuit that was filed by attorneys general of New York, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, Minnesota, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, and Vermont. And if you're surprised that California is not in that list, it's because Newsom announced a separate California lawsuit last week, and I think we mentioned that. So this coalition of state lawsuits is in addition to tariff lawsuits that have already been filed by a group of small businesses last week, and they're being represented by the Liberty Justice Center. And then there's a similar lawsuit earlier this month by the Civil Liberties Alliance. And it's like nobody, the fucking left and these liberal fucking states will not allow Trump's tariff program to do its job. And I read this very interesting article this morning, and I think everyone needs to take some notes from Dr. Mark Epstein. And he's a Long Island plastic surgeon who uses only American-made products. And he's saying that because of this whole, global tariff drama he's not allowing it to negatively impact his business because he buys American. He said pretty much everything in his office is American-made. Implants, pharmaceuticals, lasers, imaging systems, cutting edge technology and tools. And I think this is like an awesome example of a local business that's not a huge corporation, but a local business that is going with the America First agenda.
yeah, I think if more small businesses started promoting that they're using American-made products, I think that's a huge marketing strategy right now because,
Yeah.
people don't know, and I would want to support businesses. I mean, I can't say I'm going to go get plastic surgery, but, maybe there's other small businesses I can support. But when I was thinking about this lawsuit with what was it called? The small business one, where they're doing a lawsuit against Trump. What I'm thinking is, like, rather than file a lawsuit and try to bully him into something, why not ask to sit down with Trump or Bessent on behalf of small business owners and come up with a plan, a solution, a strategy? I mean, like some kind of relief, because I know there are small business owners that are going to be hurting in the meantime that maybe can't get products that are made in America because we don't have that much manufacturing here anymore. But why not try to work with them rather than just like going straight to a lawsuit? And I mean, I know the answer. I know we're never going to see that from the left, but I
Yeah.
just think you get more bees with honey, especially when it comes to Trump. He does not take too kindly to people that attack him in the court system. But speaking of all of this, I guess Walmart executives, and I think a lot more, I want to say Home Depot or another few big stores, met with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and basically told him that if Trump doesn't make a deal with China soon, shelves are going to be empty and that it's happening like quickly. So I want to play a couple clips. The first one is Scott Bessent at the International Finance Forum on Wednesday. And I think it's interesting to hear his take on all of this.
In particular, is in need of a rebalancing. China's economic system, with growth driven by manufacturing exports, will continue to create even more serious imbalances with its trading partners if the status quo is allowed to continue. China's current economic model is built on exporting its way out of its economic troubles. It's an unsustainable model that is not only harming China, but the entire world. China needs to change. The country knows it needs to change. Everyone knows it needs to change, and we want to help it change because we need rebalancing too. China in particular.
Okay, so I wanted to play that clip because something that I know I didn't realize until this whole tariff thing took place is that it's not just the US that's been screwed by China taking all the manufacturing. It's like every other country, including a lot of Asian countries that have just been decimated. Their manufacturing is gone. China's been tariffing everyone like crazy. And
Yeah.
so it brings it up again. It's like maybe Trump's not the bad guy. He's just, the only person that's been willing to stand up to this. And not only is it going to benefit the US, but it literally is benefiting the entire world because all of these people, like hundreds of countries, have come forward now to negotiate. And I think it's going to be a win-win for pretty much every country except for China because they've been screwing us. So anyhow, they got away with it for a long time. It's finally stopping. But after all of this, going down over the last week or so, Trump did say to the press that he wants to meet with Xi Jinping one-on-one to negotiate. He wants to actually have a sit-down meeting. And here is what he said to reporters on that.
I'm going to play hardball with China. I'm going to play hardball with you, President Xi. No. We're going to be very nice. They're going to be very nice. And we'll see what happens. But ultimately, they have to make a deal because otherwise they're not going to be able to deal in the United States. So we want them involved. But they have to, and other countries have to make a deal. 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high.
What level do you think it'll come down to?
It'll come down substantially, but it won't be zero. It used to be zero. We were just destroyed. China was taking us for a ride, and just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I think it's going to work out very well. But no, it's at 145%. It will not be anywhere near that number.
President.
I'm not going to say.
See, it is a strategy.
It is a strategy, yeah. And he has been saying this whole time, like he's waiting for China to come to the negotiating table and he's completely open to negotiating. And China has refused, which I think is ridiculous because look at how many decades they got away with 0% tariffs and taking all of the manufacturing business from America. And it's like, we're your biggest customer and you're not even willing to sit down at the negotiating table. Who's the real bad guy here?
Right. Yeah. But I do have some good news in terms of bringing business back to America. And I was reading this in Fox Business They reported Wednesday that under Trump, U.S. investments have reached more than 5.2 trillion since January, and that these companies are expected to generate over 450,000 jobs. And we talked about some of this before when we were, I think we were talking about AI, technology investments and AI. And so we know there's Apple, NVIDIA, SoftBank, Oracle, and OpenAI. But there's also big investments in the pharmaceutical industry and energy companies. And so far, private sector investments have totaled 1.8 trillion, and foreign investments in America are up to 3.3 trillion. And that includes investments from the United Arab Emirates, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and India. And I think Wednesday, you had mentioned the $21 billion investment commitment from Hyundai. And it's like, we're on the right track. And people just need to let Trump do what he does best, which is negotiating financial deals. And like, I believe he can do that with his tariff program and negotiate what's best for the United States. And like he just pointed out, at some point, China is going to come to the table.
Yeah, they're going to have to. I mean, they have a lot more to lose than we do. And I think it's crazy, by the way, that it's April and over $5 trillion in investments. I mean, that's unheard of. That's insane. So it's not even like we have to be patient. It's already working. It's just a matter now of like building the factories here to manufacture things. But speaking of China, this is kind of off topic, but it does have to do with China. And I really want to play this clip for you. It's from Anna Matson's podcast, and she had on Tiffany Chianci. I don't know if I said her name right, but this woman has become really big on TikTok for predicting another economic crash, like even bigger than the housing crash of 2008. And she goes into depth on like how private equity firms are basically using people's pensions and 401k funds to buy bad debt, and it's all going to collapse. But all that aside, she was asked about the TikTok ban and like China and the, that whole situation. And she had a really interesting take on it. So let me play that for you real quick.
How little our government officials know about what's happening in private equity. Just a really fun example. Why do they want to shut down TikTok? What's the excuse they've been using? We know it's because Meta is paying them, but what excuse are they using?
Because China, it's dangerous that they're going to own our data. It's for national security.
All of the politicians have kids in private school for their safety, not because they're elitist. It's for their safety. They're in some of the most elite private schools in the United States, in every state in the United States. Do you know who acquired the largest collection of private school, like super elite private schools in the United States?
Who?
It sounds Italian. Primavera Private Equity. Do you know who they're owned by?
Who?
The Chinese Communist Party is literally in control of the most elite prep schools in the United States and the curriculum being taught to our politicians' children.
Wow.
I don't think anyone's ever actually let me say that.
Is that not wild?
That's insane. And I'm writing this down, Primavera and prep schools, because now I have to look this up.
Yeah, they showed the screenshots of, it was like right on Wikipedia, like, yeah, the Chinese Communist Party owns this group. And I mean, we know that the CCP has been infiltrating universities since like the 50s, but I had no idea that they bought all these private schools. And, pretty much all of our politicians have their kids in these schools. Like, that's a big problem. That's a huge conflict of interest.
That is crazy, but does it surprise you at this point if they've bought up farmland and they're, watching our military bases and infiltrating all areas of our country and our education system? Like, I'm not surprised, but everyone should be fucking alarmed.
Yeah. Well, and it makes me wonder, are they the ones pushing this whole trans agenda on young kids, knowing if they start tearing apart like the social fabric of families in the United States, that leads to like tearing apart the United States. Like maybe they're the ones that put forward all these ideas, because when you look at all these kids that are being transitioned, it is like the wealthier kids that would be going to these private institutions.
Well, we do always comment about how China is playing the long game. Like, so, this has been going on for years, like what, 40, 50 years? So
Yeah.
it would not be surprising. Oh my God. Okay. Well, I'm going to bring it back to some lawsuits because I have some more I want to talk about. And Stephanie, do you know that at this point, there has been over 170 lawsuits filed against Trump's executive orders?
That is insane.
Yeah,
Insane.
it is.
That's got to be a world record.
Yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. So just for a couple of them, yesterday, a U.S. District Court judge named Landia McCafferty, she blocked Trump's directives that threatened to cut federal funding for public schools with DEI programs. And this was all related to a lawsuit that was brought by the National Education Association and the American Civil Liberties Union back in March. So the judge ordered, listen to how fucking insane this is. The judge argued that the Trump administration did not clearly define what a DEI program entails, and that this is a violation of teachers' free speech rights. So in her decision, she wrote, quote, "A professor runs afoul of the 2025 letter," referring to Trump's directive, "if she expresses the view in her teaching that structural racism exists in America, but does not do so if she denies structural racism's existence. This is textbook viewpoint discrimination," end quote. And then there's also a similar lawsuit about this same directive that's coming from the American Federation of Teachers and the American Sociological Association, which has asked a federal court in Maryland to stop the Trump administration. And I think that one's still awaiting a decision. But now we have judges in Maryland, D.C., and New Hampshire that are all blocking portions of Trump's DEI efforts to get rid of DEI. Yesterday, another U.S. District Court judge, Colleen Kohler-Cottley, blocked the Trump admin from requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote. And they also barred the Election Assistance Commission from withholding federal funding from states that don't comply with the order. And this judge's rationale was that it's Congress and not the president that has the authority to regulate federal elections.
God forbid we ensure that American citizens are the only ones voting in American elections. I mean, how ridiculous. But speaking of the whole school thing, did you hear about the case that is now in the Supreme Court this week where public schools in Maryland don't want to allow parents to opt their children out of lessons featuring LGBTQ plus themes due to religious objections? I mean, to me, yeah.
The fact that this has made its way to the Supreme Court is fucking insane.
It is insane. And I think it's great because the narrative of the left and the MSM for the past 5 years has been that these books aren't being offered to young children. That's misinformation. They're making that up. Well, now it's coming out that no, yeah, it's actually revealed that these books and materials are in fact available to children as young as 4 years old, which is insane. And one of the arguments from the Supreme Court was, okay, if in these schools already parents can opt out of the health education class, then you can simply just add on this to that, opt-out form. Like, it's not like you have to do any extra work. You're just adding another thing. And they're fighting it all the way to the Supreme Court. That's how badly they want to push this material on young children.
Yeah, this is absolutely insane to me that parents who don't want their children to receive this kind of nonsense have to take this to the Supreme Court. Like, absolutely insane. And then speaking of the whole LGBTQ agenda, yesterday Trump had to appeal to the Supreme Court because of his whole the ban on transgender soldiers in the military because a federal appeals court has blocked that policy nationwide. So now it's up to the Supreme Court to make that decision. And then another federal judge in San Francisco just blocked the Trump administration from denying federal funds to sanctuary cities that don't cooperate with immigration laws. And it's like, every time this administration tries to take a step forward and do what the American people voted for them to do, they get blocked with fucking lawsuits and these crazy judges.
And talk about just freaking entitlement. Okay, we're not going to comply with federal law, but we still expect the federal government to give us funding.
Right.
How insane is that? I mean, that's where we're at right now. That's crazy. Something else that's going all over social media, or TikTok at least, is you have all these people on the left that are complaining about Trump floating the idea of a $5,000 check to anyone that has a baby. So the Trump administration is considering this proposal to offer a $5,000 baby bonus, basically, that's supposed to address the nation's declining birth rate. So President Trump had expressed support for the idea, and all he did was he said, "Sounds like a good idea to me," when he was asked about it. And of course, the left is going crazy over this because they hate babies. So I want to play a clip of Whoopi and the women from The View that turned this wonderful incentive into something negative. You'll like this one.
Yes, it sounds like a lot of money, but if you can't pay your rent, if you can't pay for your after-school programs for your kids, if you said to me,
but isn't something better than nothing, I guess?
No, not in this case.
I feel like if Biden proposed this, we would all be saying it's groundbreaking and a good idea.
No, I'm sorry. I don't like the idea that somebody is saying, I'm going to pay you to have more kids. I know we're not allowed to bring up the other times people suggested that, but I will tell you, this is not the first time
it feels
in the country.
Tale.
Is she talking about China bringing up the what the fuck? Oh wait, no, they did the opposite. They didn't let people have kids.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell she's talking about, but it's just like laughable. It's like, what does the left have against babies? Like, they really hate babies. Like, they want everyone to have an abortion, and now they don't want people who do want to have kids to get $5,000 in government support. Why?
This is even crazy because I mean, I don't even know if the Trump administration is doing this, but I remember this even when I was growing up. The more kids you have, the more government money you get. So I knew people that were like even teenagers when I was in high school that were having kids just so they could get government funding. And so and now they're arguing against extra money. Like, it's just fucking insane.
Right. Well, and she's like, not in this case. Yeah, because it's Trump. If it were anyone other than Trump, they would be like, oh, this is so wonderful, supporting people that need it, you know? And it's just like, if you don't want to have kids, that's fine. No one's forcing you to have kids. Like, it's just ridiculous. But if you do want to have kids, okay, like, let us give you $5,000 and you're fighting that. It's just absolutely absurd. But like you said in the beginning, they can no longer argue about abortion because Trump didn't ban it like they said he would. And so they've got to find some other way to argue. And they're literally like grasping at straws here. It's so ridiculous.
I don't know how anyone watches The View. I do not know how they have an audience left. And
I don't either.
I just, every time that woman opens her mouth, I just can't.
Same.
I gotta change to a science-y topic for you.
Ooh.
You're gonna like this one because you know how Wednesday you talked about Florida banning weather modification?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, the UK is doubling down on doing the exact opposite. So Within the next few weeks, reportedly, the government is going to approve a 50 million pound geoengineering experiment to dim the sun in a crazy attempt to fight global warming and slow down climate change. Now, this is over $66 million in US dollars. And it's a project that's going to be attempted by the Advanced Research and Intervention Agency, which is a government agency there. And they're going to use techniques like injecting aerosols into the atmosphere and doing cloud brightening to create climate cooling. And reportedly, these are going to be small controlled experiments. So according to the program director, he said, quote, "This program will explore critical, unanswered questions as to how or whether we might cool the Earth safely and responsibly on the timescales required to avoid climate catastrophe. One of the missing pieces in this debate was physical evidence from the real world. Models can only tell us so much. Everything we do is going to be safe by design. We're absolutely committed to responsible research, including responsible outdoor research. We have strong requirements around the length of time experiments can run for and their reversibility, and we won't be funding the release of any toxic substances to the environment. We'll be announcing who will be given the funding in a few weeks, and when we do, we will be making it clear when any outdoor experiments might be taking place," end quote. So yeah, I'm sure that this is going to be entirely safe and non-toxic, and they're going to be totally transparent throughout this whole process, right? Bullshit. And I am not the only one who thinks this is bullshit, because I read this awesome quote from a pro-farming commentator named James Melville, and he put this on X and said, "Britain is a place where there's low amounts of sunshine, and yet the government is willing to spend 50 million pounds of taxpayer money on dimming the sun, while plastering prime farmland with huge solar panel developments, which require sunshine. You can't make this stuff up."
Oh my God, that's so freaking true. Like, they want all these solar panels. And I was thinking that when you first mentioned it, isn't the UK like already gloomy and gray and cloudy? But now they're going to dim the sun like even more and make it even more depressing. Like, how ridiculous is that? And I just think it's also ridiculous. Like, okay, global warming, according to them, is caused by all these emissions. And so to combat that, we're going to go and emit a bunch of particles and chemicals into the atmosphere with jets that emit the thing that's causing the global warming, which is CO2.
Right.
How does that make sense? And mark my words, there's going to be flooding in the UK. We're going to hear stories of catastrophic flooding, and we're going to know exactly what caused it.
I look forward to it.
Well, I look like a crazy person every day because I go outside every day now and I'm looking in the sky. I'm like, did they stop yet? I only see one streak instead of 15, so that's a good sign. Oh, man, that's crazy. Well, I'm glad I don't live there. Sorry for anyone that does. All right, well, that's all we have for today. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday. Thanks for tuning in.